On Global TV News Prime, Tinubu assures equitable development across all regions of the country. In business, Senate interferes with Nigerian National Petroleum Company Group Chief Executive Officer over alleged funds misappropriation. On the foreign scene, North Korea says United States must accept its status as a nuclear weapon state. And in sports, Athletics Federation of Nigeria confirms Yaba Tech for national trials. Hello and welcome to all our viewers in Nigeria and around the world to News Prime on Global Television, coming to you live from the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Priscilla Obasi. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTime channel 276. Now the news in detail. President Bola Tinubu has assured that his government will ensure equitable development across all regions of the country with no area left behind. Tinubu stated this in Kaduna at a two-day interactive session on government citizens' engagement organized by Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation, represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume. The President stated that the Minister's interaction with stakeholders at the event would unveil empirical facts and figures that the North would not neglect. Akume highlighted key achievements under the Renewed Hope agenda, speaking on several interventions of the present administration, including economic reforms, education, health, security, infrastructure, and food security. To commemorate with the Benue community, the First Lady of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Oluremi Tinubu, has donated the sum of 1 billion naira to victims of the recent Yelwata attack in Benue State. Benue State correspondent Felicity Ndere reports that during the condolence visit to the state, wife of the president, Senator Tinubu, described the killings as tragic and entirely unnecessary.
About 6 weeks ago, the Yelwata community in Gumaloko government area of Benue State suffered a deadly attack that left hundreds dead and thousands displaced. Today, the Nigerian's First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, visits the state to commiserate with the victims. Her visit converged at the new banquet hall of the government house in Makurdi, where she met with key stakeholders and announces a 1 billion donation on behalf of the Renewed Hope initiative.
Nigeria is blessed for a reason, and having diverse ethnicity, religion, culture is meant for a reason. We will say Nigeria is more like a mini America, that you have different people coming for the growth of that land. I believe that diversity is supposed to help us to grow as a people, not to destroy us. So for me, hope is not lost. We heard you, and I believe my sister, the First Lady of Nasarawa State, has heard as well. And we will take the message back home. And we pray, and we know that our security chiefs, they are doing their best. And maybe for me coming here is for them to hear again, for the nation to hear again.
In his welcome address, Governor Hyacinth Alia, while appreciating the visit and show of empathy by the First Lady, renewed his call for the establishment of the state police to better address security challenges.
Decentralized, locally rooted policing structure will greatly enhance intelligence gathering, swift response, and accountability. It is time for us as a nation to embrace state police as a practical and necessary step towards securing lives, property, and peace across the nation.
Also speaking, The chairman of the Benue State Council of Chiefs and DOTIV, His Royal Majesty Professor James Ayate, called for the immediate flushing out of terrorist elements from Benue and neighboring Nasarawa states.
Most of our attacks take place in the communities that are close to or share boundaries with Nasarawa State. Yet Nasarawa State is not under the same spate of attacks. The Nasarawa State governor himself has publicly raised alarm on the influx of terrorists into his state and his helplessness in dealing with the situation as the chief security officer of the state.
He also called on the federal government to provide adequate compensation to the victims, enabling them to rebuild their lives and safely return to their ancestral homes. In Makurdi, Felicity Ndere reporting for Global TV News.
Still in Benue, the President, Nigerian Bar Association, Afam Osigwe, SAN, has expressed concern over Nigeria's high terrorism ranking and growing food crisis due to displacement. The NBA president made this known at the North Central Security Summit 2025 in Makurdi, the Benue State capital. He further emphasized on the urgent need to address insecurity in Benue State as a call for peace and legal reform. Benue State correspondent Felicity Ndere has more.
Gotta keep right on searching till I find.
The North Central Security Summit 2025 was held in a resounding call for peace, accountability, and legal reform. The President, Nigerian Bar Association, Afam Osigwe San, says the summit will help to discuss policies, legal reforms, and community strategies to improve security and justice with the goal of promoting peace and stability in the region. He emphasized the urgent need to address insecurity, referencing recent violence incidents in the state.
Some of the killings we witness are reported to arise out of crisis, ethnic crisis, farmer header crisis, and we thought that having a conversation around this theme and talking about strengthening our security architecture would go a long way in stemming the tide of these unlawful killings.
The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, represented by Air Commodore Olufemi Akinsanya, affirmed that the Nigerian military will uphold the tenets of the law with respect to human rights. Professor David Ikoni and the representative of the traditional rulers, His Royal Highness George Ede, highlighted security lapses while stressing the importance of citizens' involvement in intelligence, vigilance, and trust building with law enforcement.
Nigeria challenges in security are multi-dimensional. But despite this aggravation, but conscious of our own mandates, we rest assured that the armed forces of Nigeria will continue to execute assigned tasks in accordance with the rule of law, especially human rights and international humanitarian law.
They get them arrested initially, and maybe by the time they take them to court, some technicalities in the law will free these same people. And by then they have known that these are the people that have pointed fingers at me and others. That means it makes the communities and their leaders more vulnerable and more insecure.
Governor Hyacinth Alia called the summit timely, citing security challenges in Benue and urging judicial reforms, and expressed hope for lasting solutions.
I am confident that we will not only diagnose our problems, but prescribe practical, implementable solutions that will transform the security landscape of North Central Nigeria for generations that follow.
Under the theme Strengthening Security, Rule of Law and Justice Delivery in North Central Nigeria, the three-day summit convened by legal experts, government officials, security personnel, and civil society leaders from across the region.
The Minister for Housing and Urban Development, Ahmed Dangiwa, has urged stakeholders in the housing sector to intensify efforts to tackle Nigeria's housing deficit, which currently stands at more than 23 million units. The minister made the appeal during the 19th edition of the Africa International Housing Show held in Abuja. Ubong Usoro has the details.
The Minister of Housing, Ahmed Dangiwa, has called on developers, builders and professionals in the built environment to prioritize affordability in their designs, decrying the growing housing deficit in the country. He stated that the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is committed to addressing housing needs of Nigerians through various policy reforms and public-private partnerships. He added that the government is also creating an enabling environment for affordable and accessible housing delivery across the country.
But let us be honest about the biggest elephant in the room. Already Professor Jerry Gana has already identified it. The biggest challenge in the room is the challenge for affordability. Across the continent, the housing deficit is not only a question of supply, but also access. Too many people, even if when housing is available, simply you cannot afford it. Incomes are low, not only in Nigeria, but across Africa. That's why the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR is focused not only on building houses, but also on fixing structural and macroeconomic foundations that will make housing affordable and sustainable today and in the long run.
The minister emphasized the need for innovative building solutions, the use of local materials and cost-effective designs to make housing truly affordable for low and middle-income earners. He reaffirmed the federal government's commitment to collaborating with developers and other relevant stakeholders to bridge the housing gap and improve the standard of living for Nigerians. Ubon Usoro for Global TV.
The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has hosted a post-election follow-up and needs assessment mission from the Economic Community of West Africa States Network of Electoral Commissions, ECONEC, in Abuja. The mission seeks to evaluate Nigeria's implementation of recommendations from the 2023 general elections. Aniete Patrick reports.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, received a delegation from the Economic Community of West African States Network of Electoral Commissions, ECONEC, on a post-election follow-up mission in Abuja. Led by the head of Liberia's National Elections Commission, Devita Brownie Lassana, the Ghanaian's Deputy Electoral Commissioner, Dr. Bosman Asare, the team is in Nigeria to assess progress made on recommendations issued after the 2023 general elections. Professor Yakubu says ECOWAS made 37 recommendations, 13 addressed to INEC and 24 directed at other stakeholders including the National Assembly, the Nigerian Police, civil society organizations and media regulators. He confirmed that Independent National Electoral Commission had acted on all recommendations within its administrative capacity while awaiting legislative action on others.
Of these recommendations, 13 are addressed to INEC, while 24 require action by other institutions and stakeholders, such as the National Assembly, the Nigeria Police Force, the National Broadcasting Commission, the National Information Technology Development Agency, civil society organizations, the Nigeria Union of Journalists, and political parties under the umbrella of the Inter-Party Advisory Council, IPAC. Furthermore, the follow-up mission will also interact with the National Identity Management Commission.
He noted that the Commission's detailed response, along with the 2023 election review report, is publicly available on its website. He commended ECOWAS and ECONEC for their consistent support to electoral integrity in the region and appreciated development partners. The leader of the delegation from ECONEC and head Liberia's National Elections Commission, Devita Brownie Lassana, while commending the INEC chairman, noted that the visit is a peer-to-peer review on its reports of the 2023 general elections to see how well Nigeria has implemented it as a way of lessons learned.
Peer-to-peer review of our presence here during the 2023 elections, but more importantly, the recommendations that we proffer, which were outlined in a report of our visit here. We've come to see how best INEC has implemented those recommendations, and we anticipate that during our engagement, we may be able to understand reasons for some of the issues that came out of the 2023 elections.
The follow-up mission is expected to engage key institutions, including National Identity Management Commission, as Nigeria continues efforts to strengthen its electoral system. Aniette Patrick, Global Television News.
You're watching the live broadcast of News Prime. When News Prime returns, Ethiopia hosts United Nations Food Summit as millions face hunger. Details coming shortly, plus sport and foreign stories on the other side of this break. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just tuning in, this is News Prime on Global Television. Now we go to the business news. The Senate Committee on Public Account has granted 3 weeks to Group Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Bayo Ojulari, for a comprehensive report on the 210 trillion naira allegedly misappropriated from 2017 to 2023. This followed a plea made by the NNPCL GCEO before the committee in order to enable him look into the said financial audited report. Topsy Gimba has the details.
The Chairman Senate Committee on Public Accounts, Senator Ali Wadada Nasarawa West, says the investigation stemmed out from the discovery made by the Committee on the Financial Audited Report of NNPCL to the tune of 210 trillion naira from 2017 to 2023.
It's 107. If you put them together, the two will give you 210 trillion. Under normal accounting, it's assets minus liabilities. But in this case, the liability figure or the figure of the liabilities haven't been substantiated to the committee. So that means it is not acceptable by the committee. So 103 trillion on the liability side is not acceptable to the committee because it has not been substantiated.
The Group Chief Executive Officer NNPCL, Engineer Bayo Ojulari, pleaded with the members of the committee to consider and give him additional time to look into the report following the fact that he was new in the system.
Some time to quick look into this specific perspective that you have given. Personally, I need to understand that the GCEO, I need to understand these issues myself so that I can ensure appropriate representation whenever we have to appear before you. I will also make a plea, Mr. Chairman, sir. The technicalities of these details, if you could permit me to ensure that at least I have a crack team of about 3 to 4 people specifically to dig into these questions. I was asking my CFO if he has a copy, because I don't think, no matter how much we try, that we can give you satisfactory response.
After wider consultation among themselves, the members of the committee granted 3 weeks to the Group Chief Executive Officer, NNPC Engineer Bayo Ojulari. Topsy Gimba, reporting for Global Television News.
The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has raised its global growth forecast for 2025 to 3.0%, crediting a rush in global trade activity as firms move to beat looming U.S. tariffs. The IMF chief economist, Pierre-Olivier Gouin-Cha, warned that the momentum is artificial and driven by distortions. Mukhtar Kasim reports.
In its latest update, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, says global growth will hit 3.0%, slightly up from April's 2.8% projection. IMF chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gourinchas says much of the increase comes from exporters fast-tracking shipments before new United States tariffs take effect, but it warns that this could slow trade later in the year as demand softens.
Well, yes, so we are seeing growth for 25 that is revised upward slightly to about 3% for this year from 2.8 in our April projections. So that's kind of good news. At the same time, inflation is more or less on track, so really it looks great. But as we point out, there are reasons to be very cautious. So first is the tariff shock is in fact not as bad as we were projecting in early April. Why? Well, because there have been pauses that have been announced, and then there have been some announcement of trade deals with a number of countries, and we're expecting to see tariff rates that are lower than what we were projecting in early April. To give you a sense, around 17% for US tariffs on the rest of the world. Back in April, we're expecting something of the order of 24%.
The United States is forecast to grow by 1.9%, while China edges up to 4.8%, aided by temporary tariff pause. Europe sees modest gains driven by pharmaceutical exports from Ireland, but the IMF says tariff-driven inflation and uncertainty remains key risks.
And then oil prices, which have been somewhat declining in the last year and are expected to also continue remaining relatively low compared to their 2024 level, that is a source of revenues for the Russian economy, and that's also weighing down on their economic prospects. So all of these things account for the downward revision that we're seeing, and this downward revision brings us closer to sort of the medium-term growth projections that we are seeing for the Russian economy. So a lot of the growth.
Although the numbers suggest resilience, the IMF insists that rebound is temporary, shaped more by trade distortion than true recovery. Mukhtar Qasim, reporting for Global Television News.
United States President Donald Trump has outlined a sweeping new rate posture, announcing a universal tariff for essentially the rest of the world at 15 to 20%. The president, who stated this at Tilbury Resort, also revealed plans to introduce specific tariffs on pharmaceuticals. Our correspondent Mukhtar Qasim reports.
Speaking alongside British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at his Turnberry Resort, President Donald Trump says the new tariffs would apply to countries without bilateral trade agreement with the United States.
We're going to be setting a tariff for essentially the rest of the world, and that's what they're going to pay if they want to do business in the United States. Because you can't sit down and make 200 deals. But we made the big ones. We just finished Indonesia. They opened up their country. We just finished Japan. They opened up their country. You know, Japan opened up the country. They were totally closed. They opened up to our cars, even to rice. Rice was a big deal. They would never take anybody else's rice. They'd take their rice.
Trump says world tariff would set a blanket rate of 15 to 20%, up from the current 10%, intended to pressure smaller economies into direct negotiations.
Philippines, we just finished. They opened up their country. They were very closed. I'd love to see China open up their country. I just want to be nice. I would say in the range of 15 to 20%. But we're going to be announcing sometime very soon, I think, pharmaceuticals are our whole thing. And the companies know. And drug prices are going to be coming down very substantially in the U.S., very, very substantial.
While the United States and the European Union have reached a tentative trade deal, including a 15% tariff on most European Union goods, like medicines, some branded pharmaceuticals could still face higher duties. President Trump is signaling a tougher, more streamlined trade stance by introducing uniform tariffs and targeting pharmaceuticals. His administration is redrawing global trade lines with major implications for both partners and competitors. Mukhtar Qasim, reporting for Global Television News.
Now, on the foreign scene, it has been observed that global hunger is on the rise, worsened by conflict, climate shocks, and economic instability. In response, world leaders have gathered in Addis Ababa Ethiopia for the United Nations Food Systems Summit, seeking bold ideas and urgent action to transform the way food is produced, shared and consumed. Zara Nasir has more.
Against the backdrop of worsening humanitarian crisis in regions like Sudan and Gaza, the Ethiopian capital has become a hub of global dialogue on food and survival. At the heart of this year's UN Food Systems Summit is a single message: hunger is not inevitable, and transforming food systems is a global responsibility. For Ethiopia's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, the summit is an opportunity to reposition Africa from a continent seen as vulnerable to one recognized for its vast agricultural potential.
Despite progress, the African continent faces mounting challenges. Yet Africa can feed itself and help feed the world. But this requires first development financing. Africa needs predictable concessional finance to invest in agriculture, rural transformation, infrastructure, and nutrition.
Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, emphasized the importance of global cooperation that prioritizes local empowerment and sustainability.
Insecurity is therefore, in its every aspect, a political issue. But not only. It is also, and above all, an economic issue. We would be making a serious mistake if we limited ourselves to looking at food systems through the face of poverty, suffering, and hunger. Food systems are an engine of growth and development, both for the most fragile nations and for those that are economically more solid.
From Addis Ababa, a powerful reminder echoes: in a world where food is abundant, no one should go hungry. The summit is not just a gathering of leaders, it is a call to action, and with lives at stake, delay is no longer an option. Zahra Nasser, reporting for Global TV News.
Now we go to the sport news. The Athletics Federation of Nigeria has confirmed that Yabatech Sports Complex, Lagos, for the 2025 World Championship Trials, which will be held from July 31st to August 2nd. The Federation settled for the venue on Monday, 3 days before the event, as uncertainty has clouded the event in the last week following the non-clearance of the initial venue, the MKO Abiola Sports Arena in Abeokuta, by the World Athletics. The trials is a compulsory selection meet for Nigeria's senior athletics team ahead of the 2025 World Athletics Championship in Tokyo. And still in sports, Nigerian top striker Victor Osimhen is set to arrive in Istanbul this week as Galatasaray prepare to unveil the Nigerian striker following the finalization of his €75 million transfer from Napoli. Abdullah Kabuku, Vice President of Galatasaray, is expected to travel to Italy this week to complete the transfer. The anticipation among Galatasaray fans is coming to an end, with the club's management ready to bring the world-renowned striker to Istanbul once the paperwork is completed. And that is it on News Prime, and here's a recap of our top stories. We told you President Bola Tinubu has reassured that his government will ensure equitable development across all regions of the country with no area left behind. In business, we told you the Senate Committee on Public Accounts has granted 3 weeks to the Group Chief Executive Officer of Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, Bayo Larry, for a comprehensive report on the 210 trillion naira allegedly misappropriated from 2017 to 2023. On the foreign scene, we told you North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's influential sister has called on the United Nations state to accept North Korea's irreversible status as a nuclear weapon state, warning that dialogue will never lead to its denuclearization. And in sports, we said the Athletics Federation of Nigeria has confirmed the Yabatech Sports Complex, Lagos, for the 2025 World Championships trials, which will be held from July 31 to August 2. And that is it on News Prime. A quick reminder that Global Television is on DSTV channel 365 and StarTime channel 276. Kindly follow us across all social media platforms now showing on your screen using the handle @GlobalTVNG. I am Priscilla Obasi. Thank you very much for watching. Good evening.